back. Adrian gives it off to Mills, 5-yard line, touchdown Nebraska. Dedrick Mills finds the end zone of the Huskers. Being rushed, steps up, eludes the rush, gets hit, and goes down. And that's a sack for the Huskers. Around the left side, he's got a first down, 35-30, 1-0, 25-20, 15-10, 5. He is in. Touchdown, Nebraska. Snap down, the kick is up, and the kick is good. Here's Lane. Huskers win it 13-10.
It is time for another version of HuskerChat. This year it's brought to you by Newcomb Diesel of Kearney. We are joined by Sean Callahan, the publisher of HuskerOnline.com. Sean, we're here. We didn't know if we were going to be here, but we have a football game on Saturday, and everyone has to be happy about that.
Yeah, we're about a week away from Halloween. Who knew that we'd have to wait this long? But we got Husker football. We got Loper football coming back. So yeah, it's great. I think there's a lot of unknowns. I think a lot of people have a cautious optimism, but they know the opponent Nebraska's playing this week, how good Ohio State is. But I still have this feeling that it's not going to feel real until we see that ball kick off and we see Nebraska play football. And hopefully we'll get a better feel for what this team is, and we're going to know all about them after this game on Saturday. But yeah, it's somewhat surreal that it's taken this long to get here, but finally we've gotten this point.
What about this third version of the Huskers for Scott Frost? There hasn't been any media access really to watch the team due to COVID. What's your take from what you've heard on what Scott Frost has to work with this time around?
Yeah, it has been different, Jayson, without kind of the hype machine, the media running around every day. And usually a preseason is just full of just very hype-ish type stories about this new player or that guy. And I think that's maybe been one of the positives for them to not have to deal with that added element. It's been very controlled as far as what we get, who we get. We're not seeing anybody in person, face-to-face. But, when you look at this team, I have no doubt it's deeper than any team Scott Frost has had. And it should be. This is his third year where he's really, been able to add a couple of full recruiting classes. The offensive line and defensive lines might be young long-term, but there's a lot of material there. I do think the offensive line, they return every starter from a year ago, and then they'll plug in Bryce Benhart as well. So I like that group. I think on paper, it's as strong of a line as Nebraska's had in a number of years. And I think if they're going to take a step forward, the offensive line is going to be a big part of it.
How about the quarterback position? We heard there was a race. Do you think it was actually that close between Martinez and McCaffrey?
Yeah, I do think so. I think Luke McCaffrey had a really strong camp. He's shown a lot. And, like Dedrick Mills said today when we talked to him, he's like, hey, I feel like we have two starting quarterbacks. I don't look at one as the starter over the other. And I think the biggest thing to look for is this year, I believe the leash will be shorter on Martinez. I feel like if Martinez struggles, say like the Purdue game a year ago, where he probably should have been pulled with some of the throws he was missing in that game, they would make a move and they would go to the number 2. So that leash will be a lot shorter. They like McCaffrey. And I do think that there can be packages in different situations where you will see Luke McCaffrey. I don't think you're going to see design series switches. I don't think you're going to say, all right, series number 3 will be the Luke McCaffrey series. I don't think it's going to be quite Eric Crouch, Bobby Newcomb, 1999. But I do think you will see McCaffrey help this team.
Today on Husker Chat, brought to you by Newcomb Diesel of Kearney, we're talking with Sean Callahan, the publisher of Husker Online, as Nebraska begins the season on Saturday at Ohio State. Now, you can talk all you want about the offense, but if this defense doesn't improve, Nebraska is going to continue to struggle. What's your take on that, and who has to step up for the Big Red this fall?
Well, they really need a young defensive line. I mean, they lost 3 starters on the D-line that are all on active NFL rosters and a corner in Lamar Jackson, who's on an active NFL roster. So when you put it like that, I mean, that's 4 guys that are on 53-man NFL rosters, which that speaks to, some of those guys were criticized over the courses of their careers at different times, but they were good football players. They had to replace them. I think on the defensive line, they're about 7 deep. Inside linebacker, they're really strong there right now with at least 3. Outside linebacker, I think Caleb Tanner is the key. JoJo Doman as well. Garrett Nelson, Nick Heinrich. All those guys are going to play a factor. And then I really like the secondary. They have 4 experienced starters returning, led by Cam Taylor-Britt and DiCaprio Boodle and Markel DeSmuke and Deontay Williams. So there is a lot there, but there are some key faces that need to be replaced still.
Tough one on Saturday as the Huskers open up at Ohio State. Nebraska goes in as a huge underdog. What's kind of your take on this? The one thing I'd hate to see is Nebraska to go in there and struggle, get blown out, and then they're going to hear about it from all the national media again.
Yeah, and the narrative will be, well, they wanted football in Nebraska, they got it, and Ohio State stuck it to them, and this is what you wanted, Scott Frost. Well, here you go. And so, yeah, I think a lot of Nebraskans probably are thinking the same thing. And it's a 26-point spread. It's about as big of a spread as you'll see, and I think that tells you how good Ohio State is. But one thing about 2020, which has been obviously different in a lot of aspects, not just football, but college football-wise, we've seen a lot of unpredictability with some of these games. I mean, Kansas State beat Oklahoma, and they had no business winning that game. Iowa State beat Oklahoma. Mississippi State took out LSU week 1. So there have been a lot of those types of moments where, underdog Arkansas has come out of nowhere and become a team to reckon with in the SEC. And I'm not saying that's going to necessarily happen in Columbus, but I think there are a lot of intangible factors that you just can't predict. And the key for me for Nebraska is, can they show that this offense is going to work in 2020? Because if they can move the ball consistently and put points on the board and get yards, they can do a lot more things with this football team. And that, to me, was a huge problem a year ago.
Well, we'll see what happens on Saturday morning. As always, glad to have you along. And, hey, we're glad we have something to talk about. For most of this year, we didn't know if that would happen.
Yeah, we're back and looking forward to these next 9 weeks.
All right. Thanks a lot, Sean. And that was Sean Callahan, the publisher of Husker Online, joining us once again. This is Husker Chat. We'll be bringing it to you during the 2020 season and is brought to you by Newcomb Diesel of Kearney. I'm Jayson Jorgensen.